The Galaxy Watch Ultra and Galaxy Watch 7 have a new sensor that Samsung claims has improved performance, but is that actually true? Today we'll find out by systematically testing the heart rate tracking performance, sleep stage tracking and GPS tracking, and we'll also take a quick look at some other features like blood pressure, FTP and body composition. Now I want to get this video out as soon as possible, so unlike my normal videos, I'll not show you all results at once, but I'll show you the results as I get them. So I'll be surprised as you are when we find out together how good the Galaxy Watch Ultra and Watch 7 are in my first testing. This will be an initial review and the full review will come out in a week or two. Let's get to it and let's start with an indoor cycling test. And we will test the heart rate tracking performance of the Galaxy Watches by comparing them against an ECG chest strap, which can generally record my heart rate very accurately. And I actually have a second one just as a backup. So let's get started. Okay, one shower later and things are looking surprisingly good. And I just looked at the results and they're super interesting. Let's first have a look at the results for the Galaxy Watch 7, and those results are displayed right here. So along the horizontal axis we have the reference and the Galaxy Watch 7 is along the vertical axis. Each dot in this plot is a single heart rate measurement, and the closer the points are to the blue line, the better the agreement. And as you can see, overall the agreement is actually quite good. Most points are on or close to the blue line, and especially in the higher heart rate range things look very good. The correlation is also quite good, which is this R value up here at 0.97. The correlation cannot be higher than 1, so a correlation of 0.97 is actually quite good. There is a bit of deviation though. We do see some points below and above the blue line. But what about the Galaxy Watch Ultra? Is this better, worse or the same? Well, at first glance at least, the results look very similar. Also in the higher heart rate range, the results seem a bit better than in the lower heart rate range, but still most points are on or close to the blue line, and we can also see that the correlation is almost identical at 0.97. But let's take a look at the rides themselves to see if we can see why there's still a bit of deviation. And here we can see the results over time for that spinning session. So the time is along the horizontal axis and my heart rate is on the vertical axis, with the Galaxy Watch 7 in red and the reference Polar H10 in blue-green. And as you can see, they generally agree very well. I'm quite happy with this result. It seems better than the previous generation of Galaxy Watches. There seems to be a bit of deviation in the lower heart rate range where it doesn't fully pick up on the dip in my heart rate, but overall not too bad. And there's also these two weird peaks where it has a bit of an increase in my heart rate, but overall looking very good. And we see more or less the same thing for the Galaxy Watch Ultra. Again, generally a very good agreement, only a bit of deviation here in the lower heart rate range. And we actually don't see these weird peaks on the tops, but overall honestly looking very good. And you might be wondering how this kind of performance compares to other watches. Well, that's what we're going to look at next. That kind of overview with many other devices is displayed right here, with the correlation value we were looking at before along the horizontal axis. And on the vertical axis I ordered the watches from worst to best. So the further to the right and the higher devices, the better is its correlation with the reference device. And as you can see, the Galaxy Watch Ultra and Galaxy Watch 7 seem to be among some of the better performing watches, but we need to zoom in a bit to read those labels better. And that zoomed in view is displayed right here. So these are just the watches with a correlation of 0.9 or higher. And as you can see, that includes both the Galaxy Watch 7 and Ultra that are very close to each other. And they seem to be doing quite well. Based on this first limited initial test, it seems to be doing about the same as, for instance, the Pixel Watch 2. And it's actually not that far from some of the better performing watches like the Whoop strap and some Huawei devices. I'm quite happy with those results, and that's a good first indication, but this is just the very first initial test and we'll do more to confirm in this video and also in future videos. In the next few tests I'll do some cycling workouts and some weightlifting session, and after that tonight in bed. And then at night I sleep with this guy, an EEG device that can actually measure my brain waves to compare the sleep stages as measured by the EEG device to the Galaxy Watches. Good night. Good morning, I'm now doing my morning workout, then I'll also cycle to work, and then at work, maybe later in the day, I'll analyze both my heart rate and my sleep data. See you there. Okay, it's a couple of hours later now, it's almost 6 in the evening and I mostly finished my normal work, so I'm gonna do a few hours of YouTube work now. And the first thing is to process the data, so I quickly processed some of the sleep data on my Windows laptop here, the cheapest one I could find on Amazon. So let's take a look at that data first, and after that we're gonna come back to some more heart rate data. So right here you can see the results for the Galaxy Watch 7 on the bottom and the reference device on top. And we have the clock time for both along the horizontal axis and the sleep stages on the the vertical axis. And for now, I marked the deep sleep as recorded by the EEG device in purple. And as you can see, this agrees very well. Both main deep sleep segments detected by the EEG device are also detected by the Galaxy Watch 7, so that looks really good. However, the REM sleep doesn't look quite as good. And that's quite clear from this plot, where I marked the REM sleep as detected by the EEG device in red. And as you can see, near the end of the night, there's somewhat of an agreement, but overall the REM sleep agreement between the Galaxy Watch 7 and EEG device just doesn't look very good. Most of the REM sleep doesn't match very well, so that doesn't look that great. In general, the Galaxy Watch 7 tends to detect a lot of awake time, for instance right here and right here. I was awake for a bit, but definitely not this much. However, let's now take a look at the Galaxy Watch Ultra, and this does surprisingly well. So this is the same plot as before, but now the Galaxy Watch Ultra on the bottom instead of the Galaxy Watch 7. And as you can see, deep sleep still generally agrees very well, though the Galaxy Watch Ultra detected a bit of extra deep sleep right here, but still overall this looks quite good. And surprisingly, the REM sleep also agrees very well for this night. It's again basically spot on. There's some deviation, but overall not looking bad at all. And you can also see that those awake moments are quite a bit shorter than the awake moments detected by the Galaxy Watch 7. So I'm not sure what's going on here. And this becomes even a bit more clear when we put it into numbers. And that is displayed right here. This is called a confusion matrix, where we can see what percentage of each of the sleep stages as detected by the EEG device is detected by the Galaxy Watch 7 in this case. So we have deep sleep, light sleep, REM sleep and awake. And first of all, we can see that about 68% of what the EEG device said was deep sleep was also detected as deep sleep by the Galaxy Watch 7, so that's pretty good. And all confusion in this case was with light sleep. Light sleep also shows a good agreement, with 69% of what the EEG device said was light sleep also detected as light sleep by the Galaxy Watch 7, and the confusion was both with REM sleep and awake time. Now, as we saw, REM sleep is the worst. Only about 40% of what the EEG device said was REM sleep was also detected as REM sleep by the Galaxy Watch 7, and actually more of it was predicted as light sleep instead, and also quite a bit as awake time. Now, normally I don't focus on awake time detection, but since the Galaxy Watch detects so much awake time, it actually agrees very well with the EEG device. About 67% of what was awake time according to the EEG device was also detected as awake time by the Galaxy Watch 7. However, as we saw in the individual night as well, the results for the Galaxy Watch Ultra are a lot better for this night. So deep sleep agreement is actually very similar, a little bit lower at about 65%, with again most confusion being with light sleep. Light sleep agreement is also quite good at about 75%, with most confusion being with awake time. But the REM sleep agreement in this case is actually very good at about 84%. This is some of the best REM sleep agreement I've ever seen, but we're just talking about a single night, so we need much more data to confirm this. This could just be a fluke, and it could just be by luck that the agreement is so good. Now, most confusion that was still remaining was with light sleep at about 11%. And also here, awake time detection is not bad. Normally, I don't look at this for the Zmax, but in this case, since the Galaxy Watch detects quite a bit of awake time, the awake time agreement is actually quite good. So that was just the first night of sleep, and we need a lot more data to draw any definitive conclusions, but it's a very interesting start. But you'll see more data later in this video. Let's first again take a look at some heart rate data. And the new heart rate results are also super interesting. So these are the results for the Galaxy Watch 7 we were looking at yesterday for spinning, but I did another spinning exercise. And that one actually looks quite a bit worse. So again, I did intervals, and as you can see, for several of the intervals, it wasn't able to detect a dip in my heart rate. So I'm not sure what's going on here, why it was able to do it for the exercise yesterday, but not the one today. And if you look at the same spinning exercise, but now for the Galaxy Watch Ultra in red, we can also see this struggled quite a bit more. So each time during the dip in my heart rate, it wasn't really able to keep up. But let's next take a look at biking outside. This is generally more difficult for watches, but maybe the Galaxy Watch doesn't struggle so much here. And let's start again with the Galaxy Watch 7 in red and the Polar H10 reference in blue-green. It didn't capture all the dips in my heart rate, but that's because it auto-paused the workout the moment I wasn't moving. I turned that feature off for the next two rides, but overall this looks very good. It was able to capture most of the peaks in my heart rate, so looking quite good honestly. And we see more or less the same thing for this second bike ride. Here it captured most of the dips a bit better because it didn't auto pause, and overall it's not a bad performance, though at the end it struggled a bit, but still a lot better than many watches out there. And again, we see more or less the same thing for this third bike ride. It did struggle a bit right here, and also here, But overall, compared to the competition, this isn't bad. It almost seems to be doing about as well for cycling outdoors, where most watches struggle, and here it does quite well, as it does for cycling indoors, where watches struggle much less and it seems to struggle a bit more. But let's now see how the Galaxy Watch Ultra did. And the performance for the Galaxy Watch Ultra in red here seems to be very similar to the Galaxy Watch 7. It missed the dips in my heart rate because it didn't actually measure my heart rate here because it auto-paused, but overall this looks quite good. And also this second ride looks quite good honestly, though it did struggle a little bit here in the beginning, but overall honestly not that bad a performance. And also this third bike ride honestly isn't that bad at all. It only struggled a little bit right here, but compared to much of the competition, this isn't that bad. And if you look at all these results in terms of correlations, this has decreased a bit. So this is cycling indoors with the Galaxy Watch 7. And as you can see, the correlation is quite a bit lower now at 0.85, but still not that bad. It's definitely not amazing, but we'll have to see what it looks like if I do some more indoor cycling sessions over the next few days. And the Galaxy Watch Ultra honestly looks very similar with the same correlation at 0.85. Also not terrible and not amazing. But interestingly, cycling outdoors for the Galaxy Watch 7 in this case shows almost the same performance with a correlation of 0.83. And if you look at the Galaxy Watch Ultra for biking outside, this is also very similar at a correlation of 0.87. So for biking outside, I'm actually not that disappointed. Now weightlifting, like most watches, seems to be something that the Galaxy Watch 7 struggles with a bit more. You can see the correlation is now quite a bit lower at 0.7, and we can see quite a few points below the blue line right here. So overall this isn't that good, but most watches aren't that good. Normally I don't recommend any watch with a correlation below 0.9, preferably 0.95 for weightlifting. And for some unexplainable reason, I didn't look at this graph before, the Galaxy Watch Ultra looks quite a bit worse. The correlation is super low at 0.41 and we have many points above the blue line. But let's take a look at the individual weightlifting sessions to see what's happening here. So here we can see the weightlifting session I did yesterday with the Galaxy Watch 7, where for the first 1/3 of the training I did legs, and there I did quite well, so it's able to track my heart rate. But the moment that there's tension on my arm, so when I did upper body, it really didn't do that well. It misses many of the peaks in my heart rate. But let's now look at the Galaxy Watch Ultra. And here we can see something weird's happening, especially when I was training legs here in the beginning. Like right here, where I actually had a decrease in my heart rate in between sets. The Galaxy Watch Ultra detected an increase in my heart rate. And also right here for quite a while detected a too high heart rate. So I'm really not sure what's going on here, if it was mispositioned somehow. It's the same sensor as in the Galaxy Watch 7, so I would expect them to perform similarly. So it might just be a fluke and it might just have been mispositioned on my wrist. So let's see for the next weightlifting session. So that's all the results I wanted to share with you today. Over the next 2 days, I'm going to collect 2 more nights of sleep data and a bunch more exercises. Then we're going to round all those results up and draw some first conclusions on the health and sports tracking of the Galaxy Watch 7 and Galaxy Watch Ultra. But of course, we're also still going to quickly look at some other features, like for instance the FTP calculations. But now it's time for me to go to bed. It's 2 days later now, and I've collected a lot of extra data with both the Galaxy Watch Ultra and the Galaxy Watch 7, so let's see how they did. Unfortunately for the sleep stage tracking, I only have 1 extra night of data because for the other night the reference device failed. Still, the results are quite interesting, and let's start with those. By the way, for those of you that are new to the channel, my name is Rob and I'm a postdoctoral scientist specializing in biological data analysis. Now, if you like the kind of work that I'm doing in this video, it would really help if you like, and also leaving a comment is really good for the channel. But of course, totally up to you. Now, let's go back to the analysis. And let's start with the Galaxy Watch 7. We can now see that the deep sleep agreement is okay, I would say. I think not as good as before, but 58% agreement is decent. But we can see there's quite some confusion with light sleep in this case at close to 40%. Now light sleep agreement is again pretty good at about 67%, and most confusion in this case was with both REM sleep and awake time. Now again, REM sleep shows the worst agreement with the reference device at about 43%, and about the same amount was instead predicted as light sleep. So again, for these nights, the Galaxy Watch 7 really seems to struggle with REM sleep detection. Interestingly, again, awake time detection has a good agreement with the EEG device. And that's because similar to the EEG device, the Galaxy Watch 7 also detects a lot of these short awake moments that I don't think are particularly interesting, but at least it's a good match. But let's now take a look at the results for the Galaxy Watch Ultra, which are displayed right here. And as you can see, compared to before, the performance seems to have decreased quite significantly. Especially deep sleep agreement is a lot lower now at only 43%. And that is because for the second night, the Galaxy Watch Ultra detected me as falling asleep a lot later than I actually did. So all of the deep sleep there was missed and was called as awake time instead. So I don't know if this is a fluke. The Galaxy Watch 7 didn't have this problem. So I really need more nights of data to confirm this. And we can see that most confusion over the 2 nights was with light sleep, and as we just saw, it also detected me as falling asleep too late. Now, light sleep agreement is still pretty decent at about 65%, and any confusion was with both deep sleep, REM sleep, and awake time at about equal percentages. REM sleep agreement still looks pretty decent at about 65%, and most confusion in this case was with light sleep. And similar to what we saw for the Galaxy Watch 7, the Galaxy Watch Ultra also correctly detects a lot of these short awake moments. So overall, actually not a terrible performance, but I'm curious to see if more often it will have this problem of detecting me falling asleep a bit too late and thereby missing my deep sleep. But again, I need quite a bit more data because this is very preliminary, and I honestly suspect that in the end, the Galaxy Watch 7 and Galaxy Watch Ultra will perform about the same, because likely they're using the same algorithm, and detecting heart rate movement and heart rate variability shouldn't be that difficult during the night. But let's see how these initial results compare to the performance of many other watches out there. And that overview is displayed right here. Now along the horizontal axis we have the average agreement over the individual sleep stages, and on the vertical axis we have the agreement of the worst sleep stage. And the better the agreement, the more to the top right the device is. Now this overview is slightly complicated because I use different reference devices. The devices not marked in any color were tested against the Dream 2 EEG headband, my standard reference, which I cannot use anymore because Dream went bankrupt. The devices marked in green were tested against the ZMax EEG device, so the one we used in this video. And the devices marked in blue-purple were tested against polysomnography, the gold standard in sleep stage tracking. And here you can see the Galaxy Watch 7 and Galaxy Watch Ultra marked in green. And as you can see, their overall performance is very similar. So of course we saw they struggled with different sleep stages, but again, we need more data to be sure of that. And we can also see that they're very close to my previous testing of, for instance, the Samsung Galaxy Watch 5, the Samsung Galaxy Watch 6, the Samsung Galaxy Watch 4. So these are all the previous generation Galaxy Watches, and we see actually similar performance for the Galaxy Watch 5 Pro and the Galaxy Watch 4 Classic. So overall, I don't think the sleep tracking has changed much, but again, we need more data to be sure. The one thing that puzzles me a little bit is when I compare the Galaxy Watch 5 Pro against polysomnography, so the gold standard, it did do a bit better. The problem was that it was only a single night. So all of these other results are based on many more nights. So even though the reference is better, the number of nights are worse. So overall, I slightly trust the other results a bit more because there's quite a bit more data involved. And again, just based on this very initial test, the first indications are that the sleep tracking hasn't changed compared to previous generations, but time will tell. So for sleep stage tracking, the Galaxy Watches seem to be somewhere in the middle of the pack, not amazing, not terrible. And what about heart rate tracking? Well, here we have an overview for the Galaxy Watch 7 for 4 spinning sessions. And we actually see something similar to what we saw before. There are quite a few points close to the blue line, and the correlation at 0.77 isn't terrible, but there are quite a few points above the blue line in the lower heart rate range, again indicating that it wasn't able to detect all the dips in my heart rate, so not looking amazing. And we see similar patterns for the Galaxy Watch Ultra, though the correlation is quite a bit higher now at 0.87, and there's also quite a few less points above the blue line. So I'm not sure if this is just by chance because we're just looking at 4 indoor cycling sessions, but this is looking a little bit better but showing similar general issues. But let's take a look at the individual spinning sessions real quick to see what's happening. Here you can see one of the new spinning sessions with the Galaxy Watch 7. And as you can see, it really shows similar issues to before. When I have a dip in my heart rate, it cannot really keep up. And we see this for about 3 of the segments right here. So here, here, and here. And we see more or less or an even worse version in this other spinning session. Again, sometimes it can mostly at least detect a dip in my heart rate, but quite often it detects the beginning of the dip and it doesn't really truly believe my heart rate can go that low, so it just makes it increase. So a bit of a weird pattern here. And we see a less extreme version of that for the Galaxy Watch Ultra. So it does have some trouble detecting the dips in my heart rate, but not quite as severe. And that's also what we see for this spinning session right here. Though here it's arguably as bad as we saw for the Galaxy Watch 7. And given that they have the same sensor, I guess both of them struggle just about as much. Though interestingly, both are quite good at tracking my heart rate for cycling outside. This is where more watches struggle, and the Galaxy Watch seems to have an easier job doing this. So here we have the results for the Galaxy Watch 7, and as you can see, the correlation is a little bit higher, and overall the patterns look quite good. There are less extreme deviations overall, and we see something similar for the Galaxy Watch Ultra. Again, a decent correlation at 0.86, and most points are somewhat close to the blue line at least, and there's less severe deviations. So I'm not really sure what's going on here. In some ways it's opposite to what we see for many watches out there, But let's compare their performance to that of many other watches. And by now you're probably familiar with this type of overview, so we want the watches to be as far to the top right as possible. And as you can see, the Galaxy Watch Ultra marked in red right here, and also the Galaxy Watch 7 right here aren't doing that well. They're really in the lower tier of watches. They're not absolutely terrible, but also definitely not good. They really show some issues compared to other watches for cycling indoors. However, if instead we look at cycling outside, for which the results are displayed right here, they're surprisingly among some of the better performers, so they're up here, both of them. Now, they're not quite as good as, for instance, the Apple Watch or a few Huawei devices, but they're really doing good enough for my purposes, for instance. So I'm honestly not too sure what's going on here. Maybe the dips in my heart rate are a bit more abrupt for cycling indoors versus cycling outside. But these are the results we have now based on 4 indoor cycling sessions and 6 outdoor cycling sessions. But let's see in my full review if these results hold up. And I don't want to go too deep in the results for weightlifting because the results haven't changed that much. They might have improved a little bit. So here I have the results for the Galaxy Watch 7. And as you can see, the correlation is a bit higher now at 0.75. The problem is that this is still too low for me to recommend it. Again, this is true for most watches out there, but we can see there's quite a few points below the blue line in the higher heart rate range. Again, indicating that quite often it wasn't able to detect a full peak in my heart rate. So overall, the Galaxy Watch 7 is probably not good enough for weightlifting, at least not on me. And we see something similar for the Galaxy Watch Ultra, though potentially it's even a bit worse. We can see that quite often it detected a too low heart rate. So we also see quite a big cloud of points here below the blue line in the medium to high heart rate range. But interestingly, it even sometimes detected a too high heart rate. So overall, both of them I wouldn't recommend for weightlifting. I have a good feeling about biking outside. Theirs doing quite well. And I'm not sure what's going on with cycling indoors. But again, let's collect more data and see what the results say. So those are some mixed results overall, I would say. But what do you think? Let us know in the comments below. Now let's next take a look at some other features, and let's start off with the GPS tracking performance. Now the way I usually test the GPS tracking performance is by cycling the same route several times and seeing if the signals overlap very well, which would indicate a potential good GPS tracking performance, or if there's a big deviation between the signals, which would likely mean the GPS tracking performance isn't that good. Now I only did 4 rides in total, 2 to work and 2 back from work. So let's take a look at those results. Now I always start my ride on the corner right here when I'm cycling to work. Now here we're looking at the results for the Galaxy Watch 7, and as you can see, it connected the GPS signal rather quickly and decently accurate. So it should be right here, and these signals are quite close to it. And if we then go along the route, we see there's quite a bit of deviation between the 2 signals. It's not looking that good, honestly. The signals are not that close to each other, and also right here there's quite a bit of deviation which shouldn't be there. Here it's looking a little bit better for a while at least, but here again there's some deviation. I had to take a detour right here, so this is not the Galaxy Watch messing up, but just me having to take a slightly different route. And then right here we again see quite a bit of deviation. So overall not a very good performance in this initial test, but let's see what it looks like when I was cycling back from work. And those results are displayed right here. So these are 2 times I cycled back from work, and I always start my ride right here. So one time there was a bit of deviation, but still it was connected quite quickly. And if you look at the consistency between the signals, there's again quite a bit of deviation. It's not looking amazing, honestly. There's also a bit of deviation right here. Here I did take a different route. Overall, in general, not looking very good, I would say. Here is actually not too bad, but again, here there's quite a bit of deviation. So overall, definitely not terrible. You're gonna get a general impression of the length and position of your ride, but also not very good. There's definitely better watches out there, for instance, Garmin watches. But let's now see if the Galaxy Watch Ultra actually did better. And here we have the results for the Galaxy Watch Ultra for 2 times I cycled to work. And again, we can see that the signal was acquired quite quickly, so that's good. But if we look at the consistency between the route, we luckily see it seems to do better than the Galaxy Watch 7. There is quite a bit of deviation right here, but after that, honestly, it looks quite a bit better. It's quite consistent. The signals are quite close to each other. Again, here I have to take a detour. But overall, this is looking quite a bit better than what we saw for the Galaxy Watch 7. But let's see if that's also true for the way back from work. And those results are displayed right here. Again, one time there's a bit of deviation when it acquired the signal, but it was acquired quickly. And then if you look at the consistency between the signals, this again seems to do a bit better than the Galaxy Watch 7. It might show some deviations, like right here, for instance, though it could be that I had to take a slightly different route right here. Overall, honestly, this is looking quite decent and could be a first indication that the Galaxy Watch Ultra with a different design is doing better than the Galaxy Watch 7. And finally, there are a few features of the new Galaxy Watches we still need to discuss. The first is the functional power threshold, or FTP measurement. This is a representation of how much power you can consistently output when cycling. Samsung made quite a big deal about this at launch, and I was curious to see how accurate it was. So I connected my bike's power meter to my Samsung phones and did a few indoor and outdoor bike rides, and my FTP is just nowhere to be found in the health app. I tried to Google where to find it and spent about an hour chatting with Samsung customer support, and both these things were basically useless. So at the moment I have no idea if I did something wrong, if it wasn't released yet, or if the FTP value is hidden somewhere in the app and I just cannot find it. So we'll see in a future video how well this worked. By the way, if someone from Samsung is watching, it would be amazing if you could send me a message, since I haven't been able to get in touch with anyone there. Now the next thing both watches can measure is blood pressure. You need to calibrate the watch first using a dedicated blood pressure monitor, and after that you can take measurements with the watch. I only tested it at 3 time points after calibrating, so not that much, but so far it worked surprisingly well. Each time the measurements of the Galaxy watches were just a few points away from the true value, so that's looking good. And finally we need to discuss the body composition analysis. Now this feature hasn't impressed me that much yet. I took several measurements with both the Galaxy Watch Ultra and Galaxy Watch 7, and the Ultra gave me a body fat percentage of 2.9% and the Galaxy Watch 7 a percentage of 6.6%. So that's quite a difference between the two. Now I've actually never done a full body MRI or even a DEXA scan, so I don't have a great reference for these values, but they're at least roughly in line with what my Withings scale reported today, which gave me a body fat percentage of 5.6% on my arms and torso, which is similar to what the Galaxy watches measured. I also participated in a scientific study where they measured my body fat percentage 3 times last year in what's basically a fancy version of my Withings scale, and there my total body fat percentage was always between 7 and 10%. In that case, the Galaxy Watch 7 wasn't too far off, and also the order of magnitude of both watches is quite okay. But I have to say that a body fat percentage of 2.9% as the Galaxy Watch Ultra measured just isn't that realistic. However, again, we need more measurements and a better reference to draw any definitive conclusions. But what is my overall initial conclusion? Well, the Galaxy watches aren't terrible, but they're definitely showing some issues. The sleep stage tracking appears to be similar to what it's always been, so it hasn't really improved and it's mediocre overall. The heart rate tracking for indoor cycling was actually surprisingly bad, and for outdoor cycling surprisingly good, so I'm not sure what's going on here. This does mean that the heart rate tracking does seem to have changed compared to previous generation watches, and the new sensor appears to be especially good for outdoor cycling when it's tested on me. Now the GPS on the Galaxy Watch Ultra was quite good in my initial test, though I cannot explain why it seems to do better than the Watch 7, since from what I understand both have the same dual frequency GPS. So overall, the Galaxy watches show some improvement over previous generations, but I'm not sure yet how big that improvement actually is. I'll do more testing over the next weeks and share my comprehensive review when I'm done, which also includes a test on my colleague Raphael. Are you excited, Raphael?
I am excited.
Do you know what watch you're testing?
New Samsung watch.
Yes. Here you go.
It looks very nice.
Oh, and my Galaxy Ring is on the way, but it took some extra effort to get it since it's not sold here in Austria. If you do decide to get a Galaxy watch, a Whoop strap, an Aura ring, an HDPod 4, another device, or anything at all on Amazon for that matter, even something as small as toilet paper, want to potentially save some money and at the same time support the channel, there are different affiliate and non-affiliate links in the description below that not cost you any extra, and some even provide a discount. Now, given that you watched this whole video on the Galaxy watches, check out this video on my top recommendations for sleep stage tracking, or this video on the devices I actually use myself on a daily basis. Thank you so much for watching, and catch you in the next video.